Robert Pryor. I live in Herkimer, 701 Westwood Drive. I am retired. I've been retired for 21 years, or 22 years I guess it is now. And I belong to the American Legion, the VFW, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantryman Badges Association, and I guess that's about all. And I left home in September of 1942 with my brother John and my sister Ann. And John, or Ted as was his nickname, became a member of the 26th Yankee Division. My sister Ann went to the University of Rochester to become a nurse, which she did. And I joined the Army, and I went for basic training at Camp Wheeler, Georgia. And I didn't, I stayed there for almost 5 months, and then I joined the 4th Infantry Division. And I wasn't with them too long before they sent me to Cornell University. And I spent 9 months there as an engineering course. And after Cornell, they sent me back to the 4th Division, and we went to Florida and began training for the invasion in the Gulf of Mexico. And we were in these 36-foot boats 3 times a week, LCVPs, landing craft, vehicle and personnel. And we did that until January of, well, we went on maneuvers and in between. We had ranger training, and we had lots of training. And we went to Fort Jackson in South Carolina, and finally ended up in, well, in Fort Dix, and we were going to North Africa. And they pulled us back and gave us more training in the Gulf of Mexico. And so we finally boarded the transports in New York in January of 1944. And we landed in Liverpool and went through the bombed out London area where the buzz bombs were still falling. And we went down to a place called Seaton Barracks, which was on the English Channel coast. And we trained there until we made the invasion. And and even in the training, things were a little hairy at times. We were on maneuvers in the Channel, and the Germans sent E-boats out to attack our ships. And this was in April, before the D-Day invasion. And they killed 749 of our men because of the attack, and the ship that we were on was the one that they stopped firing at, and we didn't. But everybody else, they sunk something, I don't know, 5 or 6 ships, and so it was pretty hairy. And I look at the stories of the invasion of Iraq and wonder about we did everything that was pretty dangerous. And we had well, even gas impregnated clothing we wore to make the invasion. So finally, on June 5th, we boarded ships, or no, we had been on a ship for about 5 days, but we boarded LCVPs, and that was 11 o'clock at night, and we were going to land at 6:30 the next morning in the second wave, but it ended up that we were all in the first wave. There wasn't any waves. Things were the crossing was so bad. The waves were 8 to 10 feet high, and everybody was sick. And we ended up something like a mile from where we were scheduled to land, and then we were, thank God we did, because the Germans were much more entrenched where we were supposed to land. But even so, we had 5 pillboxes to shoot at or fire at, and we had. I was in the machine gun outfit, a heavy weapons company, but our platoon was a machine gun, heavy 30 machine gun, which it means that was a water-cooled machine gun, and it had. We had a 12-man squad that and we were attached to E Company, which was in our battalion. A battalion would be 4 companies, E, F, G, and H. And the three of the companies were riflemen, and the 4th was heavy weapons. And we stormed the beach, and everybody was dropping. They said it was the easy beach, but it was. We lost something I learned later, something like 390 men that first wave, and if you can believe this, I got lost all alone with 40,000 men on the beach because. I don't know how I did, but I all of a sudden was all alone carrying 2 boxes of ammo, 250 rounds of each. And I looked around, and they had German mines that said Minen, and I decided that if I made one misstep, I would blow myself up, because I believed them. And so I turned around, and thank God the sand was soft, so I walked out the same way I came in. So that was my first real thing, real adventure. And then we really started getting hell. We were all well, in 3 days, we had a 260-man company, and we were down to 67 men, and we had firefights all the time. The Germans were attacking us with artillery, German 88s, and we pushed ahead until. We got to St. Mary-Glise, and that was where the paratrooper in the longest day hung on the church steeple, and he went deaf. And supposedly the Germans were shooting at him. I did see him just for a second, because we went into St. Mary-Glise with the 82nd Airborne. And then we came right back out because we were pushed out. So from that point on, we went up the Cotentin Peninsula to Cherbourg, and that's where I first got hit. Well, I'd been hit in shrapnel in my arm, and well, there was a fellow named an old timer. He's been in the Army for about 10 years, but he was kind of a screw up, and so he was left behind, and he came in as a replacement, and he was an old Southerner, and he asked me. He started digging a hole next to mine. They were called foxholes, and he said, Pryor, I dug 5 foxholes today, and he said, I'm not diving anymore, or digging anymore. And I said, Noah, you better dig down and dig into the hedgerow, because that's what we were told to do. And I had dug 3 foxholes that day too. But I did dig in, and he said, I can't do it, and this was at midnight. So about 4 o'clock in the morning, a tree burst. There were 3 shells came over. One went over us, one hit the tree, and one was short. And I got it then, and I thought my arm was off, but it turned out that I just had shrapnel in there. And I didn't think of Fitzgerald, who was in the next, until the next morning, or when it got light anyway. And finally I went over to his foxhole and saw him, and he was dead. He hadn't dug in. And then we went on up the Cotentin Peninsula and got to Cherbourg, and we were trying to take the airport. And it was a bitter fight. It was a 2 days or 3 day fight. And that's where I got hit finally. I got hit in the back of the head in the helmet with a sniper bullet. And they took me and 2 others, tied on the back of a tank to get us back to an aid station. And I was out for 3 days then. But I came around, and they sent me back to the front, and then I went to St. Lo, and that's where I really went wacky. And then from that was, I'd been on the line 28 days, and that's where I ended up in the hospital for 4 months. Yeah, with my wounds and my mental state. Yeah.
What do you remember about that time? Because I'm going to presume there was some stuff you just soon forget about that time.
I've forgotten quite a lot about it. That's the traumatic. It was a traumatic experience all the way around, and the VA. I've talked to the VA about the post-traumatic stress, and it's over now. But it was for a long time. Sharp noises and all kinds of things were bothering. My nerves were pretty well shot, and there were a lot of people that were pretty well shot too. Yeah.
So you found that this was an experience you were sharing with probably a lot of other soldiers.
Oh yes. There was a good many soldiers that were in the same boat. In the hospital, after I came out, there was one man there that he was perfectly all right, but he was stone deaf, and he would be for the rest of his life, because he fired a 61 millimeter mortar, or an 81 millimeter mortar, for 24 hours, and it was just the deafness had overtaken him. He couldn't hear a thing. But there were all kinds. There was Rangers in there that had one Ranger I remember had welts and boils, and no reason for it. He just went crazy about it because it had been so horrendous. Yeah.
What did you find the hardest thing to deal with at that time?
The Germans. No, we had a good outfit. We had good leaders and good soldiers. And in fact, my platoon sergeant, a fellow named Strickland, had been at Pearl Harbor, and he was a tough Texan, and he had been a staff sergeant at Pearl Harbor, and they'd made him a lieutenant, an officer, because he had the qualities for it. But he would go out looking for Germans all by himself, and a couple of times he found them. He hit machine gun nests and he took them out. Yeah.
Now, you enlisted.
Yes, my brother and I both enlisted. I had two other brothers. Another brother who was still in high school at the time we left, and he graduated in '44 and joined the Navy immediately and was sent to the South Pacific, and he was in combat in the South Pacific. So there was three of us from the same family in the service.
Did you all come here?
Yeah. The brother that joined with me, Ted, he became a school teacher finally here, and was a school teacher for 25 years. And he was the mayor of Herkimer for 6 years. And my youngest brother, Bill, graduated finally from Utica College, and he worked out of the Pentagon for 25 years. So, and my sister became an RN and married a doctor and had 5 kids. Yeah.
What kind of things do you think it's most important for those 5 kids, for your own family, your own children, grandchildren? What's the most important thing for them to remember about these historical events and about what you and others gave?
I don't know. That's a tough question. The young people don't seem to know anything about what happened for history and history, even to saving the world in a sense from Hitler. They have no concept of, and apparently they don't learn. Most of them don't learn much about it, or it doesn't sink in school, it seems to me. Although I have a granddaughter who's 11 years old now, and she had to write a poem for a class assignment, and she touched on the war, and she wrote a poem about me and about my war experiences, and so it was interesting that I because I had talked to her, but I hadn't talked to her that much.
What do the kids ask you?
They don't ask me anything. No.
Did your own children ask you?
No.
Did you tell them?
No, I didn't. I didn't talk about it for a good many years. I don't know why. I might get with other veterans, and we might throw the bull, but pretty much I didn't do anything about it. I worked. I went to school. I went to work, and I just we raised a family. Hmm?
get past it?
Yes, yeah. Well, I have some kind of a mental block, I think, that I remember it eventually, but I'll cut it off and don't worry about it after the initial incident overnight. And then
But when you were in the hospital and you said you were in there for 4 months,
Mhm.
then what happened after that?
They sent me back to limited service, and they sent me back to France. And I joined the military police as an administrator, and we ran prisoner of war camps. And we had 5 camps at a place called Chalon-sur-Saône. This is funny. But my commanding officer was a guy named Paul Hitler. He was a major. And he had been at Pearl Harbor too. And they had made him a lieutenant. And he'd been 30-some years in the Army at that time. And we were at the at a French caserne, or a army base, and it was called the Caserne Hitler by the Germans, and he was the commanding officer, and he didn't last too long because he was a tyrant anyway. He was as much of a tyrant as Hitler, I thought. But he got a discharge and came home, and then I read in Walter Winchell's column some time later that he had gone back to New York to live and changed his name to Harrison.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And then we ran a prisoner of war camps. Well, we had one for German wax, for example, and we didn't have much trouble with the prisoners. They were all fought out, and so they sent us to Marseille, and we ran a camp again with 105,000 prisoners of war. And it was a city. We had everything that a city would have. And we had bakeries. We had they had the police among themselves, and we baked bread 24 hours a day. And it was on the plains of something. It was right on the Mediterranean Sea, and so we. It was interesting. It was interesting.
Well, there's one thing I have to say I really wouldn't know much about is what we did with our own POWs.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were very good to the POWs in Germany. And we fed them well. We fed them the way they wanted to be fed, which they ate differently than we did, but we worked it. We let them we let the French take German prisoners of war to work in the coal mines, and they didn't treat them too well. They fed them scarce rations, and when 3 months was all we would allow them, and these prisoners came back emaciated. They were really worked to death almost. But we had a lot of contact with the French people to use the German prisoners for tasks to make things work.
When you were at Normandy, what did you think of What did you think of working with the French? I've had a couple of guys come here say something like, oh, you know, we had one French guy who's betraying us. He's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, I never had I had some dealings with the French when I was in the military police, because we were working on things like generators and things like that to make the camp safer and secure. And but I had a black kid who was a graduate of Columbia University who was a French major, and I used him all the time. We went together, and the French, they weren't giving you anything. They weren't. They didn't want to. They didn't want to know you. They were just even in our outfit was the first one into Paris, and they say they treated them well then, that first day, but then after that they didn't take care. They didn't treat them very well. No.
Some people have talked about wartime buddies, people that they've met. There any of I don't know, a favorite story about someone that they met, or whether they still have a relationship with that person, or whether they lost that person, or what happened. Do you have a,
Yeah, I have one that I talked to him once in a great while now. A fellow named Joe Zadzora, who was a Pennsylvania coal miner, but he got shot to pieces. He was 2 years in the hospital, and he had never worked again. His stomach was shot out, and that's what he told me anyway. And I talked to him here recently, and the newspaper where he lives now is he's in Michigan, but they asked him to go with a reporter to see Saving Private Ryan, and he said that was horrible for him, and he recommended that I not see it, so I had never have. So, but he filled me in. We had a bunch of Pennsylvania coal miners that they were good men, good soldiers, and good people to have on your side. And but he was in our squad. And
so you knew him right from the invasion?
yeah, oh yes, before that. I was in the 4th Division almost 3 years altogether. Yeah.
You had your own illness, your own wounds and some things. Do you still have residual effects from that, from being wounded?
Oh yes, yeah. My neck is stiff all the time, and well, I have other effects. I got shrapnel in my rear end too, and that bothers me. It was in the tailbone, and that's. But I was fortunate as compared to a lot of other people to get over the wounds, and it worked out.
What about coming home? What about when it was all over and you came home?
I got home on New Year's Eve, and I called my uncle and asked him to come up to the Utica, the Union Station in Utica, and bring me home, and that was it. There was nothing else done.
A reunion with your brothers?
Yeah. Well, my brother was home. My brother Ted was 104 days on the front lines. he was a forward observer for the artillery, and he ended up with jaundice, and that's why he came out of the line. And after the jaundice cleared up, they put him in limited service, and he was with General Patton and the Red Ball Express, and driving a truck that a gasoline truck to supply the tanks. Yeah. We both got the Bronze Star in World War II, among other things.
But I hate to use the word proud of. We're proud of you, but it's probably harder for the soldier to say what he's proud of. But if there's a victory, what would be the greatest victory for you throughout your wartime? What you're proud of?
Probably capturing Cherbourg, which was hard fought because we needed a port in order to unload ships fast and bring supplies and ammo and food. And that was a 5-day battle for Cherbourg, mostly the airport, but the airport was the docks too, and we did it. The 4th Division did it, and in fact, our regiment did it. The 8th Regiment. We had the 8th, the 12th, and the 22nd, and that was probably the thing. The 4th Division has been in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. In fact, it has the greatest number of casualties of any division that ever existed in the United States Army. And it's had more than 400,000 men in it over the years. In fact, it goes back, the regiment goes back to the Revolutionary War in Massachusetts, the 8th Regiment. So I was... Oh, and another thing, I was in London when the buzz bombs were going over. That was another thing that they selected 3 of us as goodwill ambassadors to go with the British troops, and so we were in Hyde Park in Quonset huts, and I was with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and Tommy Coughlin was with us, and Cornelius O'Shea was another one, and we every night there was over 1,000 ACAC guns, or 20 millimeter anti-aircraft guns in the park, and they were shooting the buzz bombs out of the sky, and all night long they were shooting because they were sending buzz bombs over every night, and that was a little scary, yeah, but we got through it, yeah.
Sure, a lot of it was scary.
Yeah.
What do you think were your best coping skills at that time?
Well, I was pretty good with almost every weapon. Yeah. In fact, I qualified with 17 different weapons, from an M1 to carbine to Tommy gun to 45 pistol, bayonet, Bangalore torpedo, rocket launcher, you know.
During the time, did you have any sense of what was going on at home or anything?
Not really. Not really. I was aware of that things were scarce, but not my aunt was my lifeline with home, and she wrote about everything was everything was fine, and they were getting along, and so my youngest brother was still home at that time, and I guess they made do.
Did you learn of what they were doing for the war effort? So many people in their own homes were doing, in their communities were doing.
No, I never did. I'll tell you a funny story though. My razor was stolen while we were in, and that was a straight safety razor. It wasn't an electric razor. And I wrote my aunt and told her that I had laid it on my cot, and when I got back to it, it was gone. So I was on the front line in the foxhole, and we got mail after about the 6th day into the invasion. They made sure that we got mail. And I got a package, and my aunt had sent me an electric razor to make up for the safety razor that was stolen.
The place out on the beach there to plug it in.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, but I'm sure it was good to hear from home even at that.
Oh yes. And my aunt was legally blind, and she wrote the greatest letters in the world, and they kept us going. Yeah. She used to subscribe to the newspaper for us too, to the Evening Telegram, and you'd get 30 days worth of newspapers at one time, and they were good too. You learned about the Telegram did a good job about of keeping track of other GIs, and so they were good to have.
So,
But everybody made fun of the fact that we got the newspapers. But,
something good to make fun of. Right?
yeah, yes.
So, so your family was from
Herkimer, yeah. Well, originally, from Herkimer, but originally from Rome and Utica and Little Falls, and yeah. My mother was from Little Falls, and her father and mother were down there. In fact, my grandfather died while I was on the way home from overseas, but he was 87 years old.
There was a lot of loss to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. But if you maintained your equilibrium and you said, "To hell with it," you could get by, and I think an awful lot of people did. And we had quite a gang of guys. I was looking at the names the other day. We have a book, an old book, a regimental book, and Manesi and Badge and Otot, and I knew a lot of them and got along with them, and but we had all kinds of people from Whitaker, from Idaho, and they were from all over the country, and mostly coal miners and farmers and things like that. We had one guy, Howard Friel, who owned a coal mine, and he ended up with the Congressional Medal of Honor. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you, do you still have your granddaughter's poem?
Yes.
Do you have the poem?
Yeah.
Would you let us have the poem? Could we use the poem?
Yeah. I kind of framed it.
Even if you could just get a copy of that.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to use your granddaughter.
All right. Okay.
She's so good.
Yes.
Yes. would be great.
She'd love that too.
I wrote it down.
She's kind of a ham.
She's
so
11,
like
right?
her.
You
Huh?
said 11 years?
11. She's in 7th grade. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
okay,
Caitlin.
that would be wonderful.
Caitlin Nisipany, her name is.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want you to tell me about some of the things that you brought.
Well, Bob Babcock wrote there's over 400 stories in there, and there's one story that I sent him that
I'm going to have you start again because one's way ahead there.
You want to take this kind of a shot?
Well,
This
no,
is
what I
the
think
book.
is if he could hold the book up.
okay.
And you could zoom in, and then you can tell me about it.
All right.
That would be a good thing.
Mhm.
Okay, let's
Because you don't
see.
want to go from the one shot to the other one. Just hold it up there till he cues you, then you
Hold
can
on.
put it down.
Put one hand on the bottom like this, resting. There you go. And just kind of hold it there.
All right.
How's that?
All
So I
right.
think he could just tell me about some of these things. I don't think we have to copy stand them. So when he gets it on that close-up, then you can start telling me about that.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
Well, it says on the back end of the book, the soldiers in this book are true heroes. And they are all kinds of stories that from D-Day to hospitals to funny things that happened to their thoughts and worries and their what kept them going. And it's a great book. And this fellow that wrote it, Bob Babcock, he's an executive for IBM. He was not an author, but he's gotten into the 4th Division. Well, he was with the 4th Division as a company commander in Vietnam, and he has story after story. So I sent him a story that I didn't write, but that the Herkimer County historian wrote, a guy named Jimmy Greiner, and it covers all the people there, a lot of the people that were in the 4th Division and other divisions in World War II. In fact, we probably had 8 or 10 men from Herkimer who were in the 4th Division. Marty Halpin, who was wounded twice, hit in the same shoulder in the same spot twice. Joe Calliger, Calvin Gross, 4 or 5 other guys that they were all in the same service. Yeah.
Well, you had said something about saving the world from Hitler. People didn't know that.
No.
Know that now. I guess what
We didn't know that at that time. And in fact, the Auschwitz and the death camps were a surprise to me because most of the German soldiers didn't know about them. They were very, very surprised, and they had they knew everything. In fact, they told us in the camp that the war was over before we knew it. They knew it because they had smuggled in radios and they had a lot of things going for them. So
What would you tell a young person so that somehow they get it, even what you didn't get at that time, you didn't understand it. What would you tell them now so that they understand it?
I tell them that war is hell, but sometimes it's necessary in order to put tyrants out of business. I think that I don't like war anymore. I was scared silly all the time we were in combat, and everybody else was too. And but as it turns out, it was necessary, and I think that whether you agree with Bush or not, I think that this war is necessary, because if we had done this, that's what I would tell, I think. If we had done this to Hitler when he invaded Poland, rather than wait, we might not have had World War II as we know it.
Yeah, just a couple other things here we wanted to, I think we wanted to show.
Oh,
I think there's
I wanted to show the.
would you like me to take those other papers?
Yeah. I wanted to explain what D-Day was. It says, this is the most frequently asked question to visitors at the National D-Day Museum in New Orleans. Many people think they know the answer, but the one answer is not so simple. Disagreements between military historians and etymologists about the meaning of D-Day abound. And in Stephen Ambrose's book, D-Day, June 6, he writes, Time magazine reported on June 12, 1944, that as far as the U.S. Army can determine, the first use of D-Day, H for hour, was in the Field Order Number 8 of the 1st Army AEF, World War I, issued on September 20th, 1918. And it was at the St. Mihiel salient. In other words, the D-Day merely stands for day. This coded designation was used for the day of any important invasion or military operation, and they used it in the South Pacific as well as in Europe and wherever. And D-Day was indicated by using D-4 meant 4 days before D-Day, while D+7 meant 7 days after D-Day. So it's pretty much the general thought that it doesn't mean anything except day. Now, this is, I don't know, I think that maybe
I just gotta keep right on going, I just gotta fix something. My mic moved down here.
yeah. This is a picture of the memorial that they erected on Main Street in Herkimer.
I think you have to move your hand down because it's at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
give me that. You can.
Oh, okay.
Then it won't be in your way.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's at the bottom right. You have to pan right a little bit there, Wade, because it's right at the, there it is. It's that structure just behind the lamp post.
Yes, yeah.
Can you see it? It's got little flick.
Under-
Yeah.
Tilt up
Yeah.
your
Just
left
turn.
hand just a little bit, there we go, right there.
Yeah.
Make it turn to that. Very
Yeah. Yeah, that had 1,700 names etched in glass on it.
I'm going to have you say it right from the beginning and just explain it like you didn't explain it yet.
Oh.
What it is.
All right. That was a memorial to World War II veterans who left Herkimer and the Herkimer area, East Herkimer.